To Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Take your protein pills and put your helmet on. Ground control to Major Tom.
It's Monday Night Sports Talk on the AirNetwork.net. Welcome to it as we pay homage and a little memoriam to David Bowie, losing his life at the age of 69 to cancer over the weekend. And by the way, just finding out that he released his final album on Friday. And in that, he also wanted to say goodbye to all of his fans. So if you get a chance to pick that album up or perhaps download it off of the internet, do as well. David Bowie, dead at the age of 69. What a prolific artist he was, and we just wanted to pay some homage to him tonight. Here on the Monday night edition of Sports Talk, welcome into it. I'm Greg Banks, live in the studio in Huntington, PA, being joined by Chad States in Huntington, as well as Dave Shannon. Welcome, guys. Dave from Altoona, by the way. And so, guys, let me start tonight by just saying this. Dave, you probably played a little bit of Bowie in your lifetime, I would imagine. I would hope so. Guys still with me, or did I kill our audio here somehow?
No, we're here. I'm here.
Okay. Dave, I hope is still
Dave?
there. Hey,
oh, yeah.
Dave.
I'm here. I'm here.
Dave, my question to you was, you probably played a little Bowie in your lifetime.
Yeah.
I imagine,
Golden Years, China Girl.
Yeah.
Under Pressure with Queen.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. What a prolific guy. You know, and I keep thinking back to the song he did with Bing Crosby. That
White
sort of
Christmas.
sort of like it crossed the boundaries of demographics back then, and what a splendid performance. That was live on television, I believe, that night when
Yes,
we were
it
youngsters.
was, and they both did an outstanding job.
Oh, for sure.
It's kind of like, now that you brought that up, it reminds me of the Lady Gaga, Tony Bennett.
Oh, yeah.
That they do at
Collaborations
Christmas
they're doing.
time.
Yeah, exactly. I just saw Lady Gaga last night on the Golden Globe Awards, and I was surprised. She's an actress in addition to being a performer, but we'll leave that alone for now and talk about performances. Chad, jump in here anywhere you want, because I'm going to tell you what, we're going to start out with probably the ugliest thing that I've seen in my life in sports, and I've been at this for a good 50, 55 years, where I've actually been aware of what's happening on the field. Saturday's display between the Steelers and the Bengals, I mean, what was the first thing that came to your mind? First Chad and then Dave. I mean, it just seemed horrific.
Well, the first thing that came to my mind was, how is the NFL going to handle this next bout of a PR mess that they have on their hands? And that's what this ends up becoming. Is you've got two teams, obviously with a deep hatred of each other. You tried to control that. I mean, and they tried to control that the best they could at the beginning of the game, but it just was impossible to happen. So my thought was, what's the next step that the NFL is going to take? What are they going to do to prevent something like this to happen in the future? And I don't know what the answers are. It's going to be a tough one for the league offices to handle.
Dave, you and I talked about it briefly yesterday. Your thoughts on that with the audience here?
Well, first of all, a quick question for Chad. Is it college where if you get 3 personal fouls called on you, you're done, or is that supposed to be the NFL?
I don't know the answer to that. That's a great question.
Because there is, and I've seen that on television, and it may have been a college, but the bottom line is there in some organized football, you get 3 personal fouls called on you, and you're gone. I've talked to some people about this, and I actually thought that because of the reaction of the Cincinnati fans, which was as the players on the field, that the officials, I think, probably were inclined to do something with Vontaze Burfict, but it's like, I don't want to die here tonight. These people were playing, and I know it's a plastic bottle. I know it has water on it, but I'll tell you what, you let me hit you with a plastic bottle from the upper deck there in Cincinnati, and you tell me if that hurts. And if it hits you in a sensitive area in your eyes, on your face, anything like that, you tell me what that's like. And I really think that the officials got to a point where I throw this jerk out, but if I do, I might not live till tomorrow. I mean, it was the whole atmosphere there was just flat out horrible. Now, the NFL can't regulate the fans, but they can certainly do something about the play on the field. And my other knee-jerk reflex reaction was, and fans, excuse me if I use too colorful language here, because this really bothers me, that you as a head coach have no more control over your players than what Marvin Lewis does. And if me, were the owner of the Cincinnati Bengals today, I would have walked into the man's office. I'd have said, thanks a lot, buddy. You got me to the playoffs. You never won a game. And now you don't even have your damn players under control on the field. I had enough of your crap. Just get the hell out now.
Yeah, clearly, Chad.
I mean, I would have fired him today, and in addition, I'd have said, and take your stinking crew of coaches with you.
Well,
I'm done.
Clearly, that made some sense, Dave, and that was one of my feelings, that Lewis actually had no control over his players, whether it was Burfict or Pac-Man Jones. But having said that, Chad, similar situation 2 weeks ago. We talked about that Tom Coughlin deal with Odell Beckham, and I can't say that did not affect the future of Tom Coughlin as a coach. It probably had something to do with it. Would you agree with that? Same case here. Or how do you feel about the Lewis situation, I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, I mean, Dave and I were kind of talking offline before we came up. When you are the head coach, when you are in charge of something, you are in charge of everybody else that falls underneath you, and that includes their actions. So you better be damn careful that you're choosing the right people to be out there working for you, so to speak.
Right.
And I think that's where Marvin Lewis's biggest failure is becoming, is that, and along with the Cincinnati Bengals, is they're choosing the wrong people to work for them.
Right.
I think it's really hard for a head coach or for anybody to look at this great athlete, and it has been. You've seen this over time, and you've seen it. I mean, we've all watched sports. Everybody out there has watched sports. You've seen the coach that has played this guy that has a discipline problem, and we've seen that time and time again. Who's going to be the first coach that steps up that says, you know what, I can't take what you're doing to me. You're benched and you're done, and I'm not putting you out there anymore.
Yeah.
And the next coach that decides to do that is going to be a trendsetter, because it's very difficult to do.
Well,
you look at Burfict,
right.
Well, when you look at Burfict made a lot of great plays in that game to put them in position to win, but he made just as many boneheaded plays. Which one was gonna rise at the occasion? Was it going to be the bonehead, or was it going to be the great play? And well, we saw what happened.
Well, let's talk about the bonehead moves first of all. And you being a youth coach, Chad, how do you explain that to a youngster, that this is not how you play the game, so don't even try it when you come to my field? I mean, is that something that a parent should have to explain to their child watching national television on a Saturday night, that kind of behavior? How do you deal with it as a youth coach?
It is something we should tell our children about, because it's a good teaching moment. It's a life lesson to look at and to show an illustration as to how not to do something.
Right.
If you see that and you don't take the time to instruct your kid about that, or to talk about it with others, then you're doing that other person a disservice.
Yeah.
Because that's the moment in time when you've got to show, hey, this is what you don't do. I mean, you spend a lot of time showing them what they do.
Yeah.
It's also about showing them what they don't do. So it's a great teaching moment that Burfict gave us. Unfortunately, it's a terrible act that you have to show somebody what not to do.
Hey, Dave, conversely, Adam Jones said that Antonio Brown was acting after Burfict hit him in the head.
And he doubled down on that today on the Dan Patrick Show. Not only did he say it after the game,
right,
then he doubles down on it today when he's on national radio and television
program.
Well,
at least today he gave him an Academy Award. On Saturday night he gave him a Grammy, which they're two different awards here. So come on, Pac-Man, make up your mind. Is he singing or acting? What is it?
The bottom line is, I mean, for Pete's sake, if you watch that at either speed, either real time,
right,
or if you watch it in slow motion, you see Antonio Brown's neck snap so freaking hard that the man is unconscious when he's falling to the ground. And all you have to do is look at that, because he has no control over his arms. He has no control over anything. And when his head hits that turf, my God, did it bang off the turf.
And he didn't
You
get up
tell
very
me
quickly.
that's acting?
Yeah.
That's BS.
Yeah.
Bullshit, I say.
I agree with you on that one. Hey, meanwhile, let's talk a little bit about the game because, we see these maladies. Let me ask you this. Joey Porter, Chad, he comes out on the field after that hit. First of all, he should have never been on the field. You think it justifies him being fined? Because, again, we see coaches run to the field oftentimes with the trainers to check on their players. But in this case, it seemed like he and Pac-Man, because they played against one another at some given time, had a war of words for at least a second. So does Joey get fined in this situation?
Well, yeah,
should.
he gets fined.
Yeah.
And he deserves to get fined.
Yep.
He's a defensive coach. That's not his player one to begin with.
Right.
Secondly, there are trainers that are going out there to deal with that situation.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about a professional organization,
Right.
not high school football here.
Yeah.
If it's high school football and the whole coaching staff wants to go out because of a hit like that, that's a kid. That's a whole different story than a man that's laying out there on the field when you have a bevy of trained professionals. Joey Porter didn't belong on that field. As far as I'm concerned, assistant coaches don't belong on that field. A head coach can go out and see them.
Right.
But the assistants, they need to be on the sidelines. Don't be surprised to see if something comes down from the league offices about that, stating that, hey, assistant coaches they're banned from going out there.
Yeah,
I'd be very surprised if that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I've not checked yet, Dave, but I do believe they did impose some kind of fine this evening on Joey Porter because of that. Let's talk a little bit back this Burfict thing. Let's back up just a second. Suspension, headhunting, New Orleans Saints, some of those guys got years later, got suspended for the season. How long should Burfict, maybe Jones, be suspended in the future here for future games? And we'll start with Dave and then get your idea on that, Chad.
I would say my initial reaction is that Burfict is out for 8 regular season games, half the season. Okay, he is out for half the season. Jones is just a loose cannon at this point. I don't know that he was involved in anything too much he did get his licks in throughout the course of the game, but that goes on in the NFL.
Right.
Yesterday, while the game was on between Minnesota and Seattle, when the commercials would come on, I'd pop over to the NFL Network, and they have these great shows. If you've ever watched NFL Network, fans, I really recommend this program to you. It's a Football Life is the title of the program. And what they do is they'll go back over old NFL players. And, from the time they were in school till the time they were NFL players and then their accomplishments. Yesterday, the 2 shows that were on during that time period were John Riggins, and the other one was Mean Joe Green. And I'm watching Mean Joe Green go into a pile of guys and just start hammer punching the living you-know-what out of them. Mm-hmm. And it was like, I don't know if Joe could have survived in today's environment. And Jones got his licks in on some people yesterday, but he didn't get anything in like, the Burfict hit. And you know what? And I did not know about this as well. Big Ben took ownership of the fact that his shoulder was screwed up on himself. He said, I was twisting, and the guy came down on me. He said, there's nothing he did. Well, now upon further review, as it has been said, they find that Burfict actually gave him a knee in the shoulder on the way up.
Yeah, it did look like that to me as well.
Jeez.
Chad, if you're sitting in Goodell's seat right now, you've got to do something to, of course, the integrity of the game's at stake here. The shield, as he always talks about. How much time do you give Burfict off, or do you even let him back in the league? I mean, is that bad?
He's going to come back in the league. But first off, let's separate the New Orleans Saints from this.
Okay.
New Orleans Saints had a team meeting about this stuff. All right, it was proven fact that Greg Williams orchestrated a team meeting and put bounties out on each other. Unless that's proven here, you're not going to see a sizable suspension for Burfict. I think this goes no more than 4 games, but I don't even think it gets that. I think it goes to maybe 2 at that point in time. You got to remember, James Harrison also came out and defended Burfict a little bit because he was in a similar situation in a Cleveland Browns game here not too many years ago. Now, they were accusing him of targeting as well. And what did Harrison get out of that? So you've got to go back and you got to look at what your past practice was with this. Kind of take the emotion out of it, so to speak, and look at the act. I think we're putting a lot of emotion into it because, hey, we're all Steelers fans, and that's our player that's going down. But 8 games, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's excessive to begin with. I think he gets two tops if he even gets that. He's going to get a fine for sure. But the NFL has to figure out a way to really crack down on this. And again, we oftentimes look at parents and say, hey, you've got to control your children so things like this don't happen. Well, that's what Marvin Lewis's role is he has to control his children so it doesn't happen further down the road. So it really starts at home, and it really starts with these teams making sure that they have control over their players, and they're not letting it get to that point. Because as soon as you see a guy get that emotional, you've got to do something about that. And that responsibility lies with the team first, then the league second.
It's Monday Night Sports Talk on the airnetwork.net. Greg Banks in the studio. Dave Shannon live on Skype from Altoona, PA, and Chad States from Huntington, talking about that Bengals-Steelers game where the Bengals won that 18-16 to move on in the NFL, of course, playoffs here. Having said that, Dave, you touched on it very briefly. It was Ben who made that move and said he was hurt, and he should have never. But in the crux of the game, of course, things happen. Now, Ron Cook of the Post-Gazette in Pittsburgh said something about Ben today. He said nothing probably will surpass the 8-play, 78-yard drive and Ben's 6-yard touchdown pass to Santonio Holmes to beat the Cardinals in the final minutes of a game long ago. However, he says that was probably Ben's shining moment recently on Saturday when he came off the bench and he came back in. Do you think that Jones could have maybe mustered up something to get us even back in this game on Saturday?
No, I think that the magnitude of the situation was too much for Landry Jones to handle. I think he's a very smart guy. I think he knew what he wanted to do, but it's like, our whole season is now on my shoulders. I mean, it's not like in the middle of the season where if I don't do that well and we lose, at least we're not done. It's like, if I don't do well and we lose, we're done.
Yeah.
And I think it was a little too much for him. The other thing is, I don't envy him, Greg, just from the standpoint, you stand on those sidelines.
Yeah.
During the course of that game with the rain just absolutely pouring down on you, and all you're doing is standing on the sideline with this nice warm jacket on, trying to stay out of the weather as best you can and stay warm, and all of a sudden they take your jacket off and say, hey, you're going in
up
the
next.
game.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was had to be a shock just in itself. And then, as I say, I think the gravity of the situation was a little too much for him at this particular point.
Hey, Chad.
Can he be ready for Sunday is the big question.
And we'll ask that question.
He'll have to be.
Yeah, we'll ask that question in a moment. Chad, Roethlisberger described his pain as intense and said he couldn't throw the ball more than 5 or maybe 10 yards. Yet somehow he did manage to complete 5 of those 7 passes for 40 yards. And if you remember the timeline, he kind of converted a 3rd and 2 with a 7-yard pass to Toussaint and a 4th and 3 with a 12-yard pass to Antonio Brown. Again, now, okay, and we're not saying Hall of Fame, but you believe that when Ben's career is said and done, that he's got to be up there somewhere. I mean, obviously, with the greats.
My, he's the best quarterback the Pittsburgh Steelers have ever had, and you already have Terry Bradshaw in the Hall of Fame, so I think that already speaks for itself. The guy's a warrior, though. He is tough.
He is.
Whether it's to his detriment or not, he is tough. Now, granted, and Dave hit on it, we talked about it a little bit, he does put himself in those positions, though. You know what I mean? He's got to learn to protect himself better. I think he has over some time here, and I think Mike Munchak has helped out Ben's health a lot this year, too, with making sure that offensive line is doing as good a job as I've seen Pittsburgh have one in a long, long time. But Ben's a warrior. He's out there, and he knows those players know that when he's on the field, they got a shot. And that's what this was about. This was about Ben coming out and getting all those other players around them to believe that, hey, we got a shot because 7's in the ball game.
Yeah. And I agree with you on that. Again, as ugly as it was on Saturday, congratulations to the Steelers. They move on now in the AFC playoffs. By the way, Ben was sacked 3 times. I guess the question I want to ask you, Dave, is the line starting to do their job, or was this just an anomaly where, they played a tough defense here when they took on the Bengals, and they're going to face another tough one this week when they take on the Broncos?
Well, just remember this about sacks. There's more than one factor involved than just the offensive line. The big thing is how many receivers are open. And Ben's one of the better quarterbacks at being able to see the field and see how many of his guys are out there and whether he thinks they're open at that point or not. And most of the time he's dead on. And that was a credit to the Cincinnati defense covering receivers in Saturday night's game that will lead to sacks as well, because he's trying to wait for somebody to get open and do something when in fact they can't. They're just covered that well. And so your offensive line can take you so far as protecting the quarterback goes. Then the next thing that has to happen, if those things are both failing you at that point, your receivers can't get open and your line's not able to protect the quarterback, you got to change your offensive scheme so that he steps back 2 steps and lets the ball rip constantly. When they go into hurry up, I'll tell you what, I think they're one of the best teams in the NFL at doing that.
But we didn't see that very much on Saturday.
I don't know why. Maybe because of the weather. The weather may have played a factor.
Well, that's true.
There.
They did have a driving rain. Hey, Chad, having said that, that's secondary. Not talking about Shazier and the guys' linebacker core, but those guys were playing rather soft. I mean, obviously, that could be a problem against the Broncos this weekend. I mean, do you see that as a major problem? I mean, they got burnt several times.
Their secondary has been a major problem all year long. Yeah. I actually think that I'm actually welcoming Peyton Manning back to the starting lineup because I don't think he's as good as what he used to be.
Oh, no.
I think he's more prone to throw some interceptions.
Yeah.
I think the linebackers can get out and move. The fast linebackers are going to help the secondary this week.
Yeah.
I think that's a big key. But Pittsburgh, I have no idea why Mike Mitchell was playing 30 yards off the ball.
Yeah.
I've never seen that. I mean, I don't quite understand what they were doing. That's what left A.J. Green wide open.
Exactly. Yeah.
Was those safeties playing way off the ball. So I don't understand that scheme. If Butler's telling his safeties to do that, I'm not quite sure I can get it, unless he's just thinking that this is the best I can do with a weak lot, because the Steelers secondary is one of the worst in football.
Yeah, man.
That's
ahead,
the
Dave.
fear, I think, Chad, of being beaten deep.
Yeah,
as a defensive coach, it's like, I'm not going to get beat deep.
Nobody gets
You
behind
can get your 15 and 20 yarders, but you're not going to beat me on a 45-yarder down the field.
But, when McCarron could get it to Green and get it up, of course, Green could score rather easily and did one time because he did get behind the defender. So here again, we're going to run into a situation with the Broncos, not if Peyton plays, but what's the other kid's name?
Brock Osweiler.
Osweiler. They could have a game plan to get their offensive guys or their ends and, of course, some of the running backs involved in that game where they could really hurt the secondary of the Steelers. But we'll talk more about that game coming up in just a moment. Let me ask you this as we wrap up this whole thing about the Steelers and the Bengals. As we move forward, does Marvin Lewis keep his job? First Chad and then Dave.
Yes, Marvin Lewis is not going anywhere.
Okay.
He will keep his job.
Okay. What do you think, Dave? In light of the
I
fact,
think he's going to sadly, mistakenly, wrongly get the goddamn guy out of there.
Yeah. Well,
I'm sorry. Just on the premise of, okay, you got me to the playoffs, but you've never even won me a game. Go now.
Yeah,
get out.
But the Browns.
I'm done with you.
But
bring me Chip Kelly at this point.
Oh, my God. Well, hey, would you bring Tom Coughlin in at this point? Or maybe even, what's his name, Shanahan? Would you bring somebody like that in who has some experience?
Shanahan lost the locker room in Washington.
Okay.
And Coughlin's cut out of a different mold.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, first off, he's a disciplinarian, but
right.
I'm not so sure that works in today's locker room.
Do you think the game has passed him by? Seriously,
do
you think the game has passed Coughlin by? I mean,
I
in this
agree.
day and age. Seriously.
No, I don't think the game has passed him by.
Yeah.
I think your relationships and how you relate to the athletes has passed him by to a certain degree.
Yeah.
And I think that's where he's struggling at, which is no fault to his own. It's just what happens whenever you get older. Heck, I can't relate to, 13, 14, 15-year-old kids now like I could 18 years ago whenever I first started coaching.
Hey,
It's just the way you get sometimes.
Yeah, I posted on Facebook. A young lady instant messaged me today. She's 30 years old, out of Michigan. Just one of those life stories, and she's looking for a man. And I said, honey, I'm not the one. Because, first of all, I'm double your age, and I have nieces your age, and I have nothing to talk about with a 30-year-old. So Tom Coughlin has that same problem in relating to these guys. I don't know if Rex Ryan has that problem in Buffalo. I don't obviously think that the Seattle Seahawks coach has that problem, kind of relating to them, even though these guys are like in their 50s and 60s now. But having said that, Dave, do you think there's a relatability problem with some of these coaches in the NFL? And I hate to even say there's thugdom going on in the league, but there just seems to be all kinds of violence within the league.
I think the thug aspect of it is there.
Yeah.
Now, at least a portion of that comes from their off-the-field goings-on.
Right.
It's how they conduct their life off the field, and that's where, in the NFL, hands off. I mean, they're men. They live in the United States of America. They live their life the way they want to.
Right.
You can do things as a coach that kind of lets them know that you don't appreciate what they were getting into off the field.
Yeah.
But it's like you just don't have, now when you're in college, it's a completely different story because you hold their life in your hands because you can take the scholarship away if you want.
Well, you guys could appreciate this. Bill Belichick doesn't put up with any bullshit. He's the kind of guy, he'll sit your ass in a heartbeat over missing a bus or something, and doesn't have to address it, quite frankly. You know what I mean? There was remember that guy?
I'll tell you, a guy, as we've been talking about this, that I would think that if you got a problem and you need a disciplinarian to come in, Bill Parcells.
Oh, yeah, he'd be hell. I don't think he'd want that job anymore.
No, I wouldn't. But he'd be the guy to whip a team into shape, I can tell you.
Hey, it's Monday Night Sports Talk. We do this every Monday night on the airnetwork.net. Central PA is where we're located. So if you're listening from around the world on TuneIn or perhaps even on the internet, anywhere in the United States, you can always Skype us. Just go to Greg Banks on Skype and make a contact, Greg Banks 3, and we'll get you on the air with us, along with Chad States from Huntington. Dave Shannon, by the way, from Altoona tonight, live via Skype. Hey, let's talk about some of these other games. I don't know if you watched the games on Saturday, Chad, at all, but that Kansas City-Houston game, it was what it was. I knew it was going to happen, but 38-0, that surprised the hell out of me, man.
Yeah and no. I mean, Houston played in a very weak division, so that none of those teams coming out of there were going to be any good. And Kansas City had just won 10 straight ball games.
Oh hell yeah!
And plus, Dave and I picked them to go to the Super Bowl, so you knew an ass kicking was going to come in just because of that.
Okay.
Hell
yeah, because Dave got a.
We know what we're talking about here. We wouldn't be on Sports Talk, right, Dave?
Well, that's true.
Right.
And Dave got
way to go, Chad.
Yeah, and Dave, you got a coach fired already this season. So holy shit.
He got that's right, and we both got Seattle and Kansas City wins on Saturday and Sunday respectively. So hey, that's the way it goes. No, I mean that's a bad drubbing, anytime. But let's face it, give Coach Bill O'Brien all the credit in the world for doing what he did with the quarterback situation he's been given.
Yeah.
Hoyer was horrendous, but Brian Hoyer looked like the undrafted free agent that he was.
Go ahead, Dave.
As you're talking here, scrolling across the screen on ESPN, 3 coaches at Texas have been fired. 3 different coaches underneath, not Bill O'Brien.
Okay.
But 3 coaches underneath him. I think it was wide receivers, and one other offensive category, and then a defensive person.
So Houston has gotten rid of assistant coaches then, in light of the fact that they got hammered by KC, which, I mean, they should be happy in Houston that they even showed up. We didn't even realize they were in the league until about – no, seriously. 3/4 of this season, we have no freaking idea Houston even had a team. And then all of a sudden they're going to appear on national television with a quarterback. I have no idea who this guy was, and And some of their
all I know about, casual observer not watching that division because it doesn't affect the team that I'm a fan of. All I know about the Texans is J.J. Watt.
There you go.
Period.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all I know about that team.
Yeah.
And he's damn good, and I guess he's going to have surgery done.
Yeah.
And on his groin now.
Chad, whatever happened to Clowney in that whole situation? They're bringing him out of South Carolina. He goes to Houston, and hell, he just disappears. Is he still hurt or what?
Yeah, he was still hurt. In fact, he was mad that he couldn't play in that game because the Texans deemed him still. Yeah. They deemed him not 100% to be able to take the field, so he's still hurt. But let's face it. Look at the last 8 teams standing.
Yeah.
And you can name every one of their quarterbacks with ease, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you couldn't do with Houston.
Oh man.
And I think if you give Bill O'Brien a quarterback, he's going to be very dangerous with the Houston Texans.
But in this,
wonder where Christian Hackenberg might go.
Yeah.
I said you give Bill O'Brien a quarterback.
Yeah.
He's going to be damn dangerous. And that's not to say that he can't mold somebody like Hackenberg to be able to do that.
True.
He very well might be able to. Brian Hoyer is a whole different ballgame.
It's going to take some years.
He was terrible at Cleveland.
Yeah.
He was not a very good quarterback at Cleveland. He's a journeyman. They're just trying to get by and try and build a roster up and then pick the right guy for that slot. Well, they're probably going to have to do that this year. But
Isn't it interesting, though, how some of these quarterbacks come from Atlanta and they do well in the long or the stretch of the season, or at least they look half decent, or in the case of Houston, I think it was Mallett who left them and went somewhere else, or I don't know. But I'm seeing some of these quarterbacks who were destined for damnation in Houston now at least emerging on the third-string team in the NFL. Aaron Rodgers is a good case of a guy that sat on the bench behind Brett Favre for many years, and look what happened to him. I mean, so historically, if you stick in the league long enough, you might have some success. But anyhow, that's the KC thumping Houston 38-0. Let's talk a little bit, Dave, about Seattle Vikings. You and I were watching that game and talking on the phone a little bit. First of all, it was cold, man. It's like,
I'll tell you what, if you ever doubted that the elements can have an effect on a football game, just take a look at what 2 below 0 does to 2 teams that can really light up the scoreboard. My God. The thing about that is, too, both sides of the ball for sure, but you take all the big guys on the line, okay, be it defensively or offensively, and it's like the amount of energy they expend and how heavily they have to breathe.
Yeah.
And just remember, they're breathing in 2 below 0 air. Hell, it's a miracle that their lungs don't freeze.
Hey, and there was Bud Grant, old Bud Grant, 89 years old, pregame, out there in short sleeve shirt, man. You know what I'm saying? It reminded me of those games that he coached in with the Vikings back in the 60s and 70s when it was below 0 every freaking week in Minnesota. Yep. So anyhow, having said that, are you surprised, Chad, that Seattle actually pulled that game out of their rear ends, basically, because it looked like they were going to lose it?
Oh, hell yeah. I'm surprised you don't miss 27-yard field goals every day, for crying out loud. So I was shocked. I walked away from the television set.
Oh, my God.
Thinking that they had lost that game. But, with that said, it's a great point. It's hard to play the game of football in that type of environment. Yeah. It's hard to do anything in that type of environment. Hell, I wouldn't want to be outside. There's no way, let alone trying to play in those types of elements.
Hey, if Tom Brady's wife would say to me, "You're coming out in the cold, it's below 13. I'm going to give you a good time." I'm staying in the house.
Yeah, I'm probably just going to, eat some chips and stay in the house and watch her outside.
I'll ask her if she can Skype that.
Because eventually she's coming in. Yeah. So I'll just wait her out. It doesn't matter to me.
I know. Hey, man, I don't know why I said that. I hope there are no high school kids listening. But if you are, I will teach you that later, okay? Give me about 10 years. Anyhow, Dave, we were watching that game. Now, there was one catch that I caught. The dude actually caught it with one hand. He caught a brick with one hand.
Unbelievable.
I mean, was that?
What I think about, Greg, and back when you and I did the high school football game of the week,
right,
with Atlantic Broadband, one day, I noticed the gloves were becoming a popular thing, and it had nothing to do with the weather. There were guys were wearing gloves all the time, and even at high school. And I went down one day, and I'm walking by the Richland bench, and I see a pair of these gloves, and it was like, okay, I got to see what these things are all about. I picked him up and my hand stuck to the thing on the outside.
Yeah.
And it's like, I started to think about that, and it was like, Bolitnikov took a royal beating for putting stickum on his hands.
Yeah.
Well, for Pete's sake, now they give them gloves that already has the stickum on them.
And who was the guy that was the defensive guy back for the Oakland Raiders back in the day? He used all that stickum on him, man.
Tatum?
Hayes.
Tatum.
Hayes.
Jack Tatum.
He's thinking Lester Hayes and Mike Haynes whenever they were playing back in the early 80s.
All that stickum.
And
Lester Hayes was a poster child for stickum.
Yes, he was.
But it was legal.
Now, don't you agree, Chad? Aren't those gloves obnoxiously sticky?
Oh my, absolutely they are. They're like Spider-Man.
Okay.
That's what absolutely they are.
Now let me ask you
this.
this, because
that kind of catch.
Yeah.
That's something, if a guy has some athletic ability and he's tall and can jump, if he can get his hand on the ball in the right position, he's going to pull it in every time. Every time.
Yeah, let me ask you this, Chad. Out of all the catches this weekend, that one I saw yesterday, or Saturday night's catch, the butt catch, if you will, the crotch catch with, who was it, Martavius?
Bryant.
Which was the better of the two? Which is going to be most memorable?
Well, Bryant's catch will be most memorable.
Yeah.
Because it was a touchdown. The Steelers won. So that's going to be the most memorable.
Do you think he was out of bounds, though? Seriously, remember last year?
I'm telling you, that was really, really close.
It was
because
very
it's all
close.
about whether he had control with the ball secured against his leg as he was going out of bounds.
Dave,
I think he did, but it's so hard to overrule that. The call on the field was a touchdown.
Yeah, it was.
There was not conclusive evidence to rule it otherwise.
Dave,
but
you remember.
Had that been ruled an incomplete pass on the field,
well, both
it
you guys
probably would have been withheld too.
Yeah, both of you guys remember Des Bryant last year in that catch. I mean, it was obviously, to me, it was a catch. Dave, so do you think that Bryant, I mean, he was in bounds, but when he went out of bounds, did he still have control of the ball?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just saying.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Here's the thing that the NFL has to look at. All right, and let's face it, guys. When we were growing up, as long as that ball doesn't hit the ground, it's a catch, right? What's the difference? I mean, why are we squabbling over something? Okay, the guy was maybe bobbling a little bit or whatever, but it's still a catch, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Move on with life.
Yeah. All right. Monday Night Sports Talk here on the airnetwork.net. By the way, we have a wrestling coming up tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. Chad States will be at Huntington High School for the live broadcast. Huntington Bearcats, by the way, undefeated. I believe they're, 5-0, Chad? They'll be taking on the Clearfield Bison tomorrow night. You'll hear all the action live here on the airnetwork.net. Chad States in Huntington, Dave Shannon in Altoona tonight, and Greg Banks in the studio. Talking some sports, mostly about football this first segment. But let me ask you this. Packers-Redskins game, Dave. I didn't really watch much of that, but it didn't surprise me that the Packers would come back and win. Did it surprise you?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
Yes, it did. I Green Bay, and I've been joking about this, but they haven't been more snot since Ditka was wearing the Green Bay sweater in the McDonald's commercials.
Okay.
And it's purely coincidental, but the bottom line is they have not looked good. And they did not look good in the first half last night. Suddenly, in the second half, for whatever reason, they turned back into the Packers. And for me, I can tell you that spanking that they took in Arizona before, they will not get spanked this week. They're completely, whatever it was almost like somebody's flipped a switch.
Right.
And turned them back on. And that's going to be a darn good game, I think, between Arizona and Green Bay this time around.
Chad, you think that was a good matchup yesterday, Packers versus Redskins? And my feeling is Redskins, who cares? Really? Jay Gruden, the Redskins, and
they're kind of like the Houston
they're,
of the NFC?
Yeah, exactly. What do you think, Chad? Chad is with us or not longer with us. I don't know.
I'm here.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah, I think it was a good matchup. I think that Washington will learn from this moving forward.
Yeah.
But, experience kind of plays out. And I think Rodgers just kind of, came to life there in the second half and said, you know what? I got to show up. I got to do something. Yeah. And he did. Now, hold on a second. Breaking news.
Okay.
Vontez Burfict has been suspended for the first 3 games of the 2016 regular season per the NFL.
Got it live here on the airnetwork.net. Thank you, Chad.
Breaking news, one more time. Not looking good for wide receiver Antonio Brown to play Sunday due to his concussion.
Oh, no, he was acting. He was
That man, if
acting
you're
when he
listening
went
to
down.
me, he won the Academy Award,
Holy
but
crap.
maybe he has to give it back now.
And a Grammy, too.
And a Grammy.
And this
He
is
was singing.
Yeah, and this is what kills me, because just when we think we've got something going on, the Steelers and Steeler Nation, this is the kind of crap that happens. And so how do we recover from this? This is the number one receiver in the whole freaking league. We definitely need the guy on Saturday in order to beat the Broncos. We may only get half an effort from Roethlisberger too, Dave. So, hell, that puts – and what about what's his name, the running back? He may not even be coming.
D'Angelo Williams.
Yeah, he may not even be available.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, their little scatbacks that they had in there against the Bengals did just fine. I had no problem with what Todman and Toussaint were able to do.
Oh, I had no problem either.
I think they filled in admirably.
Yeah.
And I'll lead you to one other thing here.
Okay.
And that is, just remember the Steelers-Seattle game, because Antonio Brown was not a factor at all, in that game. That was Marcus Wheaton's
shut him down.
game.
Yeah, they shut him down.
Yeah. And Marcus Wheaton rose to the occasion.
Yeah.
And you have Wheaton, you have Darius Bay, and you also have Martavis Bryant.
Exactly.
And I'll tell you what, that's a pretty damn good core of receivers.
Yeah.
And even though Antonio may not be able to play, they have the weapons there. The big question is, how does this go for Ben?
Hey, Chad, thanks for reporting that, by the way. You said that Burdick will get now like 3 years off next year.
Three games.
3 games.
3 games.
Yeah, 3 years would be nice. But okay, because,
you thought 8 games was severe.
3 years. I'm sorry, 3 games, and then Antonio Brown is definitely out at this point because of the concussion protocol.
No, they're not saying definitely out. They're just saying that it does not look good for him to be there.
All right.
Due to his concussion is what I'm saying.
What do you think our chances are in the Steelers versus Broncos game then coming up on Sunday, Chad? How do you like that? How do you see it?
Well, I see it as, is this good Peyton or is this bad Peyton? If this is bad Peyton,
what if Peyton doesn't show up? What if
we're even across the board?
Yeah,
that's my point. If we're dealing with a bad Peyton Manning like you've seen throughout the regular season, I think this game goes. I think it draws even. If he shows up just even a little bit to his old self, I think Pittsburgh could be in trouble because that secondary Ryan Mallett beat the Pittsburgh Steelers secondary.
Exactly.
Ryan Mallett, don't forget about that, who was cut from the Houston Texans.
Yeah.
So just put that in perspective.
Okay, I'm not even going to ask you a score right now because you kind of like wishy-washy on this. If Peyton plays, if he doesn't play, Dave, what do you get a score on the Steelers-Broncos game, or a winner or loser? What do you got?
I think the Steelers surprisingly are going to squeak by in this game and move on to take on the Kansas City Chiefs.
Ooh, okay.
In the AFC Championship, because I'll tell you what, I cannot believe the disrespect that the Kansas City Chiefs are getting. And you tell me, you sports writers, you sports aficionados, you guys that think you know everything about the game, where in the hell has New England been for about the last 5 weeks of the season?
Yeah,
and it's still, I still say it's not a switch that you can flip on and off, even though it seemed that way with Green Bay yesterday.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I think Kansas City beats New England.
Okay,
no doubt.
That was the next game I was going to discuss. Chad, your thoughts on that? New England versus Kansas City on Saturday.
My picks. I'm gonna pick Denver in the first game.
Okay.
Just because I think that Pittsburgh won the battle this week, but they lost the war.
Okay.
They're too banged up. I'm gonna pick Denver this week.
Right.
I'm also gonna pick New England, and I think it's because Jeremy Macklin's not going to play. Kansas City's a pretty beat up team too. If they don't have that home run threat as a wide receiver, I think they're going to have trouble. So I'm going to say that the AFC holds seed and Denver and New England will get through.
All right, Monday Night Sports Talk. It's Greg Banks in the studio, Dave Shannon, Altoona, and we've got Chad States Huntington via Skype. Okay, well, let's go with this, Dave. Packers versus Cardinals coming up Saturday in the NFC. Who do you like in that game?
Cardinals. Despite the fact that the Green Bay Packers came back and resembled themselves at the end of the game yesterday, the question in my mind, and back to that, you can't just flip it on and off.
Right.
And it's like, what Packers team is showing up there in Arizona to take on the Cardinals? I have no idea.
Yeah.
And therefore, I got to go with the Cardinals.
Hey, Chad, you like that too? Cardinals overpowering the Packers because they definitely have the depth on the Cardinals this year.
Yeah, I like the Cardinals big in that game.
Yeah,
I agree. I like the Cardinals actually by two touchdowns or better.
Yeah. And I tell you, the game I'm looking forward to on Sunday is Seahawks versus Panthers. Which Seahawks team shows up, and does Cam Newton and the Panthers show out? What's your thoughts on that game, Chad? First, and then Dave. Seahawks versus Panthers.
Well, it's warmer, so Seattle's gonna be pretty happy with that. There's no doubt about it.
Right.
I'm picking Seattle. I think that Seattle defense is the best unit playing right now this side of the Cardinals offense. But
right.
I like defense to win championships. So I am picking Seattle. I'm going to pick it close. I think they're only going to win by I'm going to give it a 4-point margin here, but I'm picking Seattle.
Okay, Chad's got Seattle. What do you think, Dave, in that game between Seattle and the Panthers coming up on Sunday?
I'm going to go with Seattle too, and I'm going to narrow it down to the difference in the quarterbacks. Even though Newton has had an outstanding year,
right?
This is getting to the point where it's really push comes to shove, and you got a guy in Seattle that has been there.
Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson knows the game, and knows the gravity of the game, and I don't think it would bother him as much. And even though Cam Newton will say it doesn't bother him, and he's been the happy-go-lucky guy, there's a point where it comes down, and you sit there and you go, "Holy crap! Here I am. We almost went undefeated.
Yep.
Now I got to win this game." And I don't know that Cam Newton is necessarily up to the task. And I appreciate Chad's comments, too, about the Seattle defense. I'll tell you what, can you run against them at all? Good Lord. I mean, Adrian Peterson, despite the conditions yesterday, I mean, when he gained 3 yards, it was reason to celebrate.
Oh, exactly, yeah. But we'll see different climates and different temperatures coming up this coming Sunday in North Carolina. Obviously, if it's even like 40 degrees, it'll be a heat wave for those Seattle Seahawks players, and they'll look forward to that. I'm calling Panthers, though, in this one because I really like what I've seen with the Panthers throughout the season. And I think Ron Rivera, who, of course, was a champion himself with the Chicago Bears, he'll have them ready. So we'll look forward to that. It's Monday Night Sports Talk here on the airnetwork.net. You can always check us out at www.theairnetwork.net. And we also have rebroadcast, by the way, on our front page and our podcast throughout the entire week of this show in case you miss it. Or you can even check us out on TuneIn Radio at the Air Network. We look forward to hearing from you, by the way, on Skype. We're working on getting some numbers where you can actually call us in. Let me ask you real quick, Chad, while we have some time tonight, and Dave, Clemson versus Alabama, that game coming up in about an hour from now. Kickoff is slated. I don't know, man. Looks like Saban might be going for his 5th title. You know what I'm saying, Chad? I mean, I believe he'll be tied. If not, he won't. Will he better like Bear Bryant's record now? I know he's not won all 5 with Alabama, but he'll win his 5th because I believe he won some with LSU.
Yeah, he won 1 with LSU. I think he ties Bear Bryant, but it could be. But I think he ties Bear Bryant with the most for Alabama.
Is that what it is? Okay.
I think it's 4. I think the 5th gives him the most all time at this point in time. But
yeah,
how you calling that game? I said it before. Defense wins championships, and Alabama's defense is as good as it gets right now.
You think Dabo Swinney even has a chance tonight, Dave? Clemson Tigers as they get set to take on these guys.
Yes, I do. That is a big football team.
Yeah.
I think they will be better paced than they were against Oklahoma. I thought their pacing was a little bit off in that game, and they looked a little flat in the first half, and then it was like Katie bar the door in the second half. And if they do Katie bar the door from the opening kickoff, I think they beat Alabama.
Yeah, and Clemson's the only undefeated team in the FCS, I believe, at the end of when it's all said and done. And I like Dabo, the name Dabo. Who calls their kid Dabo? And what the hell is that? I'd love to know what that is, but I like the guy because he's got a great personality. He always seems upbeat, and I want his team to kick ass tonight. Roll Tide backwards. All right, enough for that. Let me get into this here on the airnetwork.net. Take a deep breath for a second, Chad. I'm going to get back to you. But listen, Ron Cook also says in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, those Penguins, okay, they're losing some games overtime, Dave. But, oddly enough, it's an encouraging sign because they're staying in the game.
Yeah, I'll tell you what they did on Saturday, regardless of the condition of the Montreal Canadiens, to go in to Montreal
Right.
and defeat a team 3-1 and really, quite frankly, dominate the game. And this is the first game that I've seen them basically dominate it. Second period was a little loosey-goosey, but I'll tell you what, first and third period, they dominated the Canadiens, and that is not an easy thing to do. And, Marc-Andre Fleury has looked extremely sharp since he has come back from his concussion. So that's good things. That's a very good thing.
I think Fleury
is set.
I think he's almost on line this year to break a record, one of his records for the most stops of any season. I believe that's going to happen this year.
Yeah. But, the thing about the Pens there, outshooting Montreal 12-4 in the opening period.
Yeah.
And it's just like that's not the way they played all year. And I'm telling you, Mike Sullivan is going to have a team in the playoffs. Yeah. I don't know, the one team that I look at in the East that Penguins or anybody else are going to have trouble with is the Washington Capitals, unless something horrible happens with injuries.
Well, I think
to
tonight,
the Caps.
I think tonight Ovechkin, or has he already scored over 500 goals? I mean,
he already did it.
Okay.
He did. He got his 500th and then 500 first.
Okay, good.
In the game the other night. So yeah, I mean, I just don't right now. Holtby in goal is outstanding. Ovechkin's having one of his best seasons ever. So, I don't see anybody being able, unless barring injuries, you never know about those kinds of things, too. I mean, they can crop up at any time. But right now, I'm saying Sullivan will have these guys playing really well and maybe not even having to worry about those last two playoff spots by the time the playoffs come. Once again, I tried to stress this last week. There's a hell of a lot of time here. They play into the second week of April in the regular season.
Yeah.
And there's no particular pressure like some people on television seem to think that they have to win every damn game they're playing. They don't have to right now.
Well, I think it's fair to say right now the Penguins 4-1-2 in their last 7 games. I mean, they are, and they do have the momentum. One thing that keeps me watching the Penguins at this time of the year, Dave, which is abnormal for me because I normally don't really start watching them till maybe March. But this year, I'm seeing the Sullivan's putting the right guys on the ice at the right time. And you had mentioned last week, stretch passes. You can see things happening now that just wasn't happening all season long.
Yeah, no, I mean, he understands, he was the head coach of the Boston Bruins.
Right.
And he played hockey. He gets it. Mike Johnston just did not get it. I don't know if he thought he was coaching a junior hockey league team or what it was. These guys are really at the top of the game.
Whatever happened to Johnston, by the way? Is he working at Walmart now? Or
he may be a greeter. Yeah, he could be a greeter. His little blue vest on.
No, they gave up that gig. You got to not only reap, but you got to retrieve carts and also stock shelves now at Walmart. I checked that gig out, man. You don't just greet.
You checked that gig out.
Oh, yeah, I was looking hey, Chad, I was looking for a retirement. I'm like, hell, I'd go to Walmart and be a greeter and just hug people, right? Oh, hell no. They make you work now, man.
And here's more breaking news for you guys.
Here we go.
You mentioned about Johnston. I was just eating at the Chinese buffet.
Yeah.
I believe I saw him in the back cooking. That is the power that Dave Shannon brings to the table, folks.
Yeah, Dave will get your ass fired, man. Let me tell you, Marvin Lewis, you better watch out.
Now compliments at Johnston.
Is that really chicken, though? That's what I always say to my ex-wife. How do you know that's really chicken? All right. But
breaking
listen.
News. That was breaking news.
Thank you, Chad. All right. Best of luck to the Penguins. It's on the Monday Night Sports Talk on the airnetwork.net. Let me get into this real quick, Chad. Penn State wrestling, they're still undefeated. Huntington Bearcats, they're still undefeated. They'll be on the air live here tomorrow night on the airnetwork.net. First off, let's talk about Penn State and Cal Sanderson's troops. I mean, these guys are just amazing, and we say that all the time. Yesterday they beat, I think it was Indiana. It looks like they're going to run the course here this year, isn't it?
Yeah, and they're going to. They'll have a decent match this Friday.
Yeah.
When they wrestle the Cornhuskers from Nebraska. Nebraska has a couple tough kids.
Yeah.
But I mean, Penn State's going to win that match. They are loaded from top to bottom. It's just it's one of those things where anybody who knows the sport of wrestling knows that Pennsylvania is the place you want to be. So not only has he been able to recruit the best Pennsylvania kids to come to his university and wrestle, but he's also, because of who he is, he can also recruit on a national stage as well. So these guys are really, really good right now. And if you get the opportunity, go watch them.
Hey, listen,
it's just something special.
Yeah, and I believe they have Nebraska. Who do they have coming up at the rec center this week at Rec Hall?
They have Nebraska on Friday night.
Now, let me ask you this. I'm going through the lineup here, top to bottom. Migalute is kicking things off, I believe, at 125. I'm seeing a crap load of Pennsylvania kids that we never, ever saw before on the Penn State squad. I mean, it's just incredible.
You saw Pennsylvania kids. What you didn't see was the right ones.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's a difference. A lot of the upper level kids, that were top 3 in the nation were going to Oklahoma State.
Oh, that's right.
Some of them would stay at Penn State, but they were going other places. Now those same kids are staying at Penn State. Now, some of them are going to leave. Yeah. Because you can't keep them all. You can't keep them all within the borders.
No.
For the most part, the big guns, Cale is getting, he's recognizing them. Yeah. He's Cale Sanderson, so how can you say no to him? And he's keeping them here. And he's not only doing that, but he's making them better wrestlers.
Oh, yeah.
The whole way through. So it's the perfect storm.
Well, let me ask you this, Chad, because you do follow wrestling very closely. I'm watching Penn State in the Southern Scuffle, and while they're there out in the Midwest at Northwestern University, I believe those were called, what was that tournament there? Excuse me, Big Ten had, it happens every year. It's called the Midlands. Yeah, it's called the Midlands.
It's called the Midlands.
David Taylor of Penn State represented, he wrestled in that as a club member, but obviously he's a Penn State connection. I mean, how's that happen? Has he, has he graduated? I mean, what's the deal with him?
No. He's graduated. What makes the Midlands special is the Midlands is an open tournament.
Okay.
Greg, if you want to go get in shape and go wrestle in it, you can go wrestle in it.
Oh, yeah, like I'd last 6 minutes doing that.
Well, I'm just saying, if you wanted to, you can toss your entry in and go wrestle. And that's what makes it really, really difficult, is you get guys like David Taylor that are past
training.
NCAA champions that are doing other stuff are coming back and wrestling some of these college students. Good luck to you beating David Taylor.
Now, is he training for the Olympics? Is that why he gets involved in those tournaments like that, the open tournaments? Because I saw some Iowa State guys that were involved in that, and I know that they had graduated years ago.
Sure they did. And it's just another tournament for you to go out and, practice your skills at. Now, there's a big difference between freestyle and folk style.
Oh, yeah.
Folk style is what you wrestle in college and high school. Freestyle is what you wrestle in the Olympics. So, and it is a completely different animal.
Yeah.
But, David Taylor said, hey, I'm going to just go and give this a shot. I love folk style wrestling. I haven't done it for a while. I'm just going to go play around for a weekend.
Well, Huntington never has a senior citizen match, where I can wrestle somebody other than Eric Shea. I will certainly sign up for that, because I think the rest of those guys will probably pretty much kill me, including Eric. It'd have to be a division thing. You'd have to be 55 plus, and he's not 55 plus, is he? I mean, he's not that old. Okay.
No, you're safe.
Okay, good. But I'll take on a couple of those Fink brothers from Tyrone because I already had them on their backs before. Hey, let's wrap things up here. Hey, Dave, let me ask you this. Batman movie coming out with Superman, and I know this is off target a little bit but Batman and Superman, they seem to be in some kind of hassle here as this new movie's coming out. Would you take Batman or Superman in a real fight? I mean, I don't know how this movie ends, but what do you think, Batman or Superman?
Oh, Superman. He has superpowers.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as Batman isn't carrying kryptonite with him, he's good. Okay. Superman beats him every time.
What do you think, Chad? Because I know you didn't grow up in the era of Batman or Superman or maybe the superheroes, but, Superman could pretty much kick everybody's ass. Although Batman was pretty bad. I don't know if he was bad because he had Robin with him, but what do you think? Who wins this movie?
Well, Adam West isn't portraying Batman, so I think he gets at least a little bit of a nod.
Well, Adam West is dead, isn't he?
You're not going to see. You're not going to see those. You're not going to see the captions above their heads that say "pow."
Yeah, exactly.
Wham. You know what I mean? You're not going to see that.
No, you're going to see stuff like, "Oops, there it is."
Believe it or not, guys, I have had this conversation along with many other superheroes
Okay.
versus each other with my son Ryan. So we have discussed this out.
Who's the baddest superhero according to Ryan? Because he's a young kid. I mean, who's bad?
Well, I mean, he likes Iron Man a lot,
Iron Man,
and
okay.
I give him a lot of credit there. There's no doubt about it. But when it boils down to it,
Yeah.
Superman is the next thing to God. You can't. I mean, unless you got kryptonite and who's carrying that around, you can't beat him. You can't do
That's
anything
true,
with it.
too.
So
Yeah.
it's Superman all day long, fellas.
Yeah, even
There you
Supergirl.
go.
You know, Supergirl
We
couldn't
agree
even.
on something again.
And Supergirl couldn't even
We
bring
do,
him
Dave.
down. You know, hey, Supergirl throw a little bit of that stuff at him. He'd be like, hey, all right. Hey, guys, it was fun, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
All right, man.
Yes,
Boy, that
it
hour
was.
that hour went fast online and, of course, mobile devices. It's Monday Night Sports Talk. We'll do it again every Monday night at 7 o'clock. Dave Shannon from Altoona, Chad States from Huntington. I'm Greg Banks saying thank you, everybody, and have a great night. Oh, shit. You know, Batman and Superman are getting into a kick-ass movie here.